People always say the night has its own heartbeat. I never believed it until I worked the graveyard shift. It wasn't supposed to be terrifying, just a job, really. I was desperate for money, and the local security agency offered me a position. Night guard at an abandoned regional hospital. I thought, how hard could it be? Watch the cameras, walk the halls a few times, and collect my paycheck. I'd worked night shifts before, but hospitals are different, especially abandoned ones. When the world goes silent at 3 a.m., that silence isn't empty. It's dense. You can feel it pressing against your chest. It's full of whispers you can't quite catch, shadows that don't look right when you stare too long. And in that silence, I found something that hasn't let me go. The hospital had been closed for nearly a decade. The city had built a gleaming new facility downtown, leaving this one to rot. Windows were broken, paint peeled like old scabs, rust ate at every railing. My rounds were simple. I'd check each wing: the surgical wing, the children's ward, the psychiatric floor, and finally, the basement. The place was too big for one man, but I carried my flashlight like a sword. Its beam cut into the shadows, steady and sharp. The first 3 nights were uneventful. Just the sound of water dripping from old pipes, or the occasional squeak of rats skittering under debris. I'd tell myself, old buildings make old noises. But even then, something was off. The air never felt still. It felt occupied. On my 4th night, everything changed. It was 2:40 a.m., and I was watching the camera feed in my booth. Most screens showed empty, silent corridors. But then the elevator doors opened in the basement. That wouldn't be strange in a functioning hospital. But here, the elevators had been disconnected for years. No power, no service. I leaned closer. Inside, the elevator light flickered. A weak, sickly glow, like it was breathing. I thought it had to be a glitch. Still, procedure demanded I check. When I reached the basement, the smell hit me first. Rot. Not sharp, but heavy. Ancient, like wet soil dug from a grave. The elevator stood open, waiting. Dust coated the floor except for one spot. There, the dust was disturbed, like someone had been standing barefoot in the middle of the car. I backed away, heart hammering. Over the next few nights, the whispers began. At first they were faint, like someone murmuring behind a wall, but they grew louder, sharper, and more distinct. One night, as I walked past the children's ward, I heard it. A clear voice, high-pitched, playful. "Play with us." My blood ran cold. I turned, shining my flashlight through the broken glass of the ward's door. The room was filled with tiny chairs and toys left behind when the hospital shut down. And those chairs, they were moving, rocking gently back and forth, though the air was perfectly still. I wanted to run, but my feet dragged me closer. On one of the tiny tables, a dusty toy block fell over by itself. The whisper came again. This time, more voices. "Come play with us." By the second week, sleep deprivation was eating at me. I kept questioning what was real. Was it paranoia? Hallucination? But then I heard footsteps. One night, I was sitting in the security booth, sipping bitter coffee, when the ceiling above me creaked. Heavy, deliberate footsteps. Slow. One after the other. I checked the camera feed. Nothing. No one on the upper floor. Still, the footsteps continued, crossing from one end of the hallway to the other. I grabbed my flashlight and went upstairs. The hallway was empty, but the sound didn't stop. Instead, it moved behind me. Each time I turned, the footsteps shifted to the opposite end, always just out of reach. Then, suddenly silence. I lowered my flashlight. That's when I saw it. A reflection. Not in the window glass, not on the polished floor, but in the camera lens of the hallway monitor. Behind me, a figure. Tall. Head bent at a grotesque angle. I spun around.
Found nothing.
The climax came on a stormy night. Rain battered the broken windows. Thunder rolled like cannon fire. At 3:15 a.m., the cameras went to static. The screens flickered, hissed, then cleared. And there it was, a figure, standing in the basement hallway. It was impossibly tall, limbs too long, fingers dragging against the walls. The head lolled sideways, as though broken. And even through the grainy feed, I felt its gaze straight into me. Then, it waved. It waved at the camera. My stomach twisted, sweat ran cold down my back. But against every instinct, I grabbed my flashlight and descended the stairs. The basement air was suffocating. The smell of rot stronger than ever. My boots crunched over broken tiles. Then, ding! The elevator. Its doors opened. Inside stood the figure, skin pale, sagging like wet paper. Where the face should have been, nothing, just emptiness. I froze. My body screamed run, but my legs refused. The figure stepped forward, slowly, deliberately. Each step echo, louder than thunder. Then, it spoke. Not one voice, but many. All the whispers I had heard. Children, nurses, patients, all speaking in unison like a choir of the damned. Stay with us. The words rattled inside my skull. My flashlight slipped from my hand, clattering to the floor. In the faint beam, the figure's skin seemed to twitch, like hands pressing against it from the inside. It reached out. Its hand was inches from my chest when the lights exploded back to life. Every bulb in the basement flickered, buzzing, and the figure was gone. The next thing I remember, I was outside, kneeling in the rain, vomiting until I couldn't breathe. I quit the next morning. No explanation, just turned in my badge and said, I'm done. They asked me why. I only said, because the night isn't empty. But sometimes, late at night, when the world goes silent, I still smell it. That heavy, rotting stench. And when I close my eyes, I see the elevator doors opening, waiting. I didn't expect my new job to haunt me. It started innocently enough, a posting for a night clerk at a small roadside motel on the outskirts of a town most maps barely recognized. The pay was good. Isolation wasn't a problem. I liked quiet. I liked being alone with my thoughts. The motel was called The Pines. The sign flickered like a dying flame, its neon red barely lighting the cracked asphalt. Inside, the lobby smelled of mildew and old coffee. The carpet was thick, dark, patterned with stains that looked suspiciously like dried blood. My first night began with a list of rules. Check in guests, monitor the parking lot, don't leave the desk after midnight unless absolutely necessary. Simple. Easy. But the night had other plans. I glanced up. No one. Just the empty lot, shrouded in mist. My heart skipped. I checked the cameras. Nothing. Then the bell rang again, urgent, insistent. I went to the door, hesitating. Outside, fog curled around the headlights of a lone car. The driver's step padded out a man in a suit, face obscured by shadows. He didn't speak, just handed me a card key. Room 7. I tried to ask his name. Nothing. He vanished into the fog. I shook my head. Weird, sure, but not terrifying. The motel saw stranger guests than this every week. By 2:15 a.m., another guest arrived. A woman, young, wearing a pale dress. Hair tangled as if she had run for miles. She didn't knock. She didn't speak. She just glided to room 12. Later, when I peeked through the cameras, the room was empty. No one checked in. No one checked out. But the door key still read occupied. Around 3 a.m., the silence broke. From room 3, I heard laughter. Soft, childlike, but wrong, hollow, echoing against the walls. I went to knock. Hello? Everything okay? No response, just the laughter. Then, whispered voices, overlapping, chanting something I couldn't understand. I pulled out my flashlight and slowly opened the door. The room was empty, yet the air was cold. My breath fogged. The furniture vibrated subtly, like something invisible was bouncing on the bed. Then a single word, carried on a whisper so faint I almost missed it. Stay. The clock ticked past 4 a.m. I patrolled the parking lot. Mist clung to my jacket. I noticed shadows moving at the edges of my vision, shapes that didn't belong. People without faces, standing just beyond the lampposts. When I turned, they were gone. Back in the lobby, the front desk phone rang. I answered. Silence. Then breathing. Heavy. Labored. Coming from the other end. I froze. The motel was supposed to be empty. Only me. Only the night. Suddenly, the lights flickered. The lobby became cold, unnatural. My flashlight died. Darkness pressed in, thick, tangible, suffocating. A whisper. Do you see us? By 5 a.m., I could no longer trust the cameras, or the rooms, or my own mind. Room 5 had always been vacant, or so I thought. That night, the door was slightly ajar. Inside, the walls were smeared with something red. Not quite blood, not quite pee. Ain't. The ceiling seemed to ripple, like fabric underwater. Then I saw them. Hundreds of faces pressed against the walls, tiny, distorted, screaming silently. Their mouths moved, but no sound came. Only eyes, wide, desperate. I backed away. tripped, fell into the lobby. And then the clock changed. It was 2 a.m. again. Not 5, not the next day. Just 2 a.m., repeating. Desperate to escape, I ran down the hallway. Every mirror reflected not me, but someone else, someone wrong. In the first mirror, I saw an old man with hollow eyes, his mouth stitched shut. Second mirror, a young boy, levitating, his hair floating in some unseen water. Third mirror, my own face, but my eyes were black holes. I stumbled forward, trying to reach the exit. The hallway stretched longer than possible. Doors multiplied. Each door had a face pressed against it, screaming silently, reaching out. A voice whispered from behind the mirrors, "You belong to the night now." By 6 a.m., exhaustion broke me. I collapsed at the front desk. The mist from outside crept under the doors. The phone rang again. I answered, trembling. A single whisper. "Check in." I realized the room numbers were changing. Every key card, every guest, none existed before. Only shadows, only echoes. And then I saw it on the monitor. Room 7, the man in the suit. His head tilted unnaturally, smile stretching far too wide. He lifted a hand, beckoning. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. As the sun rose, I vanished. No trace, no explanation. The motel still stands, at the edge of a forgotten town. The sign flickers. The rooms are empty, or so the locals say. But if you check in after midnight, don't be surprised if the clerk greets you with a smile you'll never forget. I never should have taken the job. It seemed perfect on paper. A night shift at a warehouse on Elm Street, just outside a city that never sleeps. The pay was good. The work routine simple. Move boxes, check inventory, keep the space secure until morning. Easy, right? The building was massive, an old industrial skeleton, paint peeling, metal beams exposed. Windows lined the top, cracked and dusty, letting in the occasional moonlight. Inside, the air smelled of rust and oil, with a hint of something else, something organic. I arrived at 11 p.m. My manager, a gruff man named Dalton, handed me a flashlight, a clipboard, and a set of keys. Don't leave the floor. Don't go near the back storage at night. And whatever you do, don't touch the crates marked with red tape. Red tape. I laughed. Sure, no problem. By midnight, I realized the warehouse had its own rules. At 12:47 a.m., I heard it. A soft scratching. Not from the ceiling, not from the walls. It came from the far end of the warehouse, with past the shelves stacked with boxes. I froze, listening. Then a faint whisper, almost inaudible. Help. I shook my head, telling myself it was the wind. Old buildings creak, shadows play tricks. But the whisper repeated, louder, closer. I pointed the flashlight toward the sound. Nothing. Empty floor, just stacked crates, quiet. Then something moved, something small. A box shifted on its own, sliding across the concrete without anyone touching it. Remember Dalton's warning? Don't touch the crates with red tape. Curiosity is dangerous. I found one. At the back corner, marked with bright red tape, stacked higher than me. The moment I touched it, the warehouse seemed to exhale. Cold air rushed past me, rattling my flashlight. The whispering grew into voices, dozens, maybe hundreds, overlapping. Angry, pleading, laughing. And then the crate opened itself. Inside, a shadowy shape shifted. Human-like, but wrong. Limbs bent in impossible angles. Eyes glowing faint red. It stared at me, and then it smiled. I ran. I tried to leave, but the warehouse changed. The hallways stretched longer than possible. Stacks of crates multiplied. Doors appeared where none existed. Each time I passed a door, I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, deliberate, heavy. I dared to look back. Nothing. But when I looked forward, a figure emerged. A man in a black coat, face obscured, just standing there, watching, waiting. I ran again. My flashlight flickered. The walls began to sweat a dark, viscous liquid smelling like iron and rot. My heart pounded. I tripped, fell. When I looked up, the black-coated figure was inches away. I felt its breath, cold, metallic. "You shouldn't be here," it whispered. I stumbled to the office. Maybe I could call Dalton. Maybe he could help. But the office was empty. Desks overturned, papers torn. A ledger open, writing itself. In the dim light, letters formed words. WESEEYOU. Boxes outside the office began to shake. The red tape, and then they started moving. Across the floor. Toward me. I ran again, deeper into the warehouse. Hiding behind stacks, I realized the crates weren't solid. Shadows moved inside. Faces pressed against the tape, screaming silently. Limbs flailing. The whispering didn't stop. It grew into chanting, an endless rhythm that made my skull ache. I remembered Dalton's warning. The back storage. I didn't want to go, but it was the only exit I could see, some faint light spilling from a half-open door. Inside, crates stacked impossibly high. The red tape everywhere. The air was thick, heavy, smelling like wet earth. Shadows moved on the floor, slithering like smoke. Then I saw them. Dozens of figures crouched, waiting. Thin, elongated, skin pallid, faces devoid of features except the eyes, bright, unblinking. They all turned to me simultaneously. A figure stepped forward, taller, more defined. It whispered, "You belong to the night now." I screamed. My legs moved, but the warehouse had other plans. Crates rose, shifting. Shadows climbed the walls. Shapes pressed from ceilings, stretching toward me. My skin tingled, then burned. I felt wrong. The taller figure reached out, touching me. I fell forward. I could see my hands, changing, stretching, pale, glowing faint red. My reflection in a puddle, a shadow, not human. And the warehouse laughed. When morning came, I wasn't there. Dalton found the warehouse empty, no trace of me, only the red-taped crates, stacked differently, as if nothing had happened. Local rumors say the warehouse on Elm Street consumes night workers. Once you see the red tape, once you hear the whispers, the building remembers you. If you ever get a job at a warehouse, at night, on Elm Street, pay attention to the crates. And whatever you do, never, ever touch the red tape.